Have you ever wondered why you treat others with kindness, tolerance, and respect, but in return you are treated with contempt or even taken advantage of? It may sound paradoxical, but it is a truth that many of us have experienced. The truth is, if you respect others too much, you will lose the respect you want to have. This is not a call for you to be arrogant or disrespectful, but a reminder that, in all relationships, from friendships to love to work, balance is always the most important factor. Imagine a society without respect. In that place, people would be selfish and competitive. Trust would disappear, cooperation would become a luxury, and in the end, all that would remain would be suspicion and chaos. That is why every civilization, every community, big or small, is based on respect. It is the key to connecting people, to working together, to building together, to surviving together. However, there is a thin line between respect and too much respect. When you believe that if you are humble, you will be loved more, that is when you start digging a hole for yourself. In fact, being too humble does not make you respected, but makes others think that you are less valuable. People tend to look down on people who are used to being pampered, and once you put them too high, they will no longer have a reason to look at you as an equal. Stoic philosophy has been saying this for thousands of years. Epictetus once emphasized, no one can humble you unless you humble yourself. And it is over respect, self-abasement, that opens the door to contempt. And Machiavelli, the famous political thinker, was more direct. People respect those who stand their ground. Never bow down. So the lesson here is not to stop respecting, but to learn to maintain balance. Respect others as you respect yourself. No more, no less. You can see this most clearly in love. When one person respects the other person so much that they become a shadow, the relationship will sooner or later go astray. The other person begins to get used to you giving in, not objecting, not demanding, and then, the initial affection turns into contempt. On the contrary, a lasting relationship can only exist when both people treat each other as equal individuals, knowing how to appreciate each other's value. The same is true at work. An employee who only respects his superiors by being silent, nodding and following orders, without daring to express his opinions or to object, will forever be just an employee. But the one who knows how to maintain proper respect, and who knows how to express his opinions calmly and confidently, is the one who is respected, because true respect is not silence, but listening and equal dialogue. So, the important question here is, how to get others to respect you? The answer lies in balance. Never look down on anyone, because arrogance kills all relationships. But also do not overestimate anyone, because when you put others on too high a pedestal, you will turn yourself into a lower person. And once you are in a lower position, it is very difficult for them to look at you with real respect. Remember, respect is the foundation. But if you want to be respected, you must first learn to respect yourself. This is not only a Stoic philosophy, but also an immutable law of all human relationships. And when you know how to maintain this balance, you will not only receive respect in return, but also receive trust, recognition, and admiration from those around you. Think about this situation. You always try to please everyone. Whatever they say, you agree. Whatever they need, you give in. You believe that the more polite and respectful you are, the more you will be appreciated. But then, have you ever realized the painful truth? Others gradually no longer see you as an equal, but as a follower. Someone who is always ready to sacrifice without recognition. This is the downside of being too respectful to others. It does not make you more respected, but on the contrary, it takes away the opportunity for others to truly appreciate you. When you always put the other person's interests above your own, you create an imbalance of power in the relationship. Think of a scale. If one person always puts the other down to raise them up, the scale will always be tilted, and in the other person's eyes, you will always be the below, the one of lesser value. True respect comes from equality, but when you put yourself down, you lose that right from the start. Not only that, but being too respectful also makes you seem like you have no opinions. Others will think, oh, this person will agree with anything I say, so why should I listen to them? Gradually, you become a shadow in the relationship. Someone who just nods, but never offers his own opinion. And remember, No one can truly respect someone who doesn't dare to speak his mind. What's more dangerous is that when you're too respectful, you become fertile ground for exploitation. Clever, even malicious people will see that humility as an opportunity to manipulate you. At work, for example, if you're always willing to take on the hard work, always silent when others pass the buck, you'll soon become the one shouldering the brunt of it all without receiving any recognition in return. Worse, they'll see it as natural for you to do. I once witnessed a friend in a similar situation. He believed that if he was more polite and more tolerant of his colleagues, the group would love him more. But the result was completely opposite. He was pushed with more and more work, while others took the credit. In the end, he was not only exhausted, but also bitter when he realized that he had never been truly respected. And perhaps, many of us have been in a similar situation. The question is, why does this happen? Because people are naturally inclined to indulge. When you give without limits, they assume that it is normal, that it is your obligation. And once it becomes normal, you will never be seen as an individual of equal worth. This doesn't mean you have to be rude or inflexible. On the contrary, you can still respect others. You can still be polite. But you need to maintain a balance. Respect does not mean always giving in. Respect does not mean allowing others to dominate you. True respect only exists when both of you are on equal footing. When your voice is as important as theirs. So the next time you're tempted to say yes just to keep the peace, ask yourself, am I being fair in this relationship? The next time you're tempted to stay silent just because you're afraid of offending someone, ask yourself, will my silence cause me to lose their respect? And the next time you're tempted to take on more responsibility just because you want to be liked, ask yourself, does the other person really value me more for this, or just see me as an easy tool to use? True respect doesn't come from putting yourself down to lift others up. It comes from standing up for yourself, setting boundaries, and saying no when necessary. Only then will others truly look at you with respect, not contempt. Have you ever realized that there is a very fine line between respect and idolization? On the surface, they both seem the same. You appreciate someone. You value what they do. But if you dig deeper, the difference is huge. And sometimes it's this confusion that makes you lose value in the eyes of others. What does true respect mean? It comes from recognizing the true worth of a person, the actions they take, the effort they put in, the character they show, and most importantly, respect is always equal. I respect you, you respect me. We may be different in position, in experience, in knowledge, but in dignity, we are equal. True respect is when you listen to another person's opinion, even if you disagree. It is when you treat the waiter in the restaurant with the same courtesy as you would treat a manager. But idolization is different. Idolization happens when you put someone on such a pedestal that they become the center of attention. And you become a secondary figure. You think that person is perfect, that their words are the truth, that their decisions are infallible. And when you do that, you lose your balance. Worse yet, when you idolize someone too much, you empower them to look down on you. Humans tend to look down on what is always groveling before them. And idolization, instead of bringing closeness, becomes the root of imbalance in relationships. Let's look at a familiar example. Love. One person in a relationship always gives in, always puts the other person first, forgetting about themselves. At first, it sounds like true love, but over time, the balance is lost. The other person gets used to being prioritized, used to never being opposed, and so they start to look down on them. Love is supposed to be based on mutual respect, but once you turn yourself into a shadow, you will soon realize that you are no longer treated as a companion, but only as a follower. At work, this is even more evident. There are employees who believe that flattery, praise, and silent compliance are the ways to be loved by the boss. But the truth is the opposite. A boss will never respect an employee who just nods. They will appreciate those who dare to give their opinions, dare to debate, dare to look at the problem from a different perspective. Because true respect at work is when you have a voice, when you show that you are contributing real value. If you only know how to flatter, you will always be a follower. Nothing more, nothing less. I remember one time in a meeting, a colleague of mine was silent throughout the entire meeting. He later told me, I didn't dare to disagree with my boss. Because I was afraid he wouldn't like it. But what was the result? The wrong idea was approved. The project failed. And he was not only criticized but also considered incompetent. Meanwhile, another person who dared to speak out against him was given more respect, even though his opinion was initially controversial. This is proof that flattery never brings respect. It only gets you pushed aside. So how to distinguish clearly? It's very simple. Respect is based on equality. Idolization is based on asymmetry. Respect is when you appreciate the value of others without lowering your own value. Idolization is when you voluntarily put others above you and accept yourself below. And the result is obvious to everyone. Respect helps you have healthy relationships, while idolization will make you gradually be despised. You may be thinking, but what if I really admire someone? Admiration is good, because it can be inspiring. But admiration does not mean turning them into a god and making yourself invisible. Admiring while remaining true to yourself. Admiring while remaining equal. That is respect. The important thing I want you to remember is this. In any relationship, romantic, friendship, or work, you can only be truly respected when you put yourself on the same level as the other person. Not lower, not higher. And if you want to maintain that balance, always ask yourself, do I respect them? Or do I idolize them? The answer will determine how they view you in the future. Have you ever wondered, how do you know if you are too respectful of others to the point of losing yourself? The truth is, it's not always obvious. It doesn't come through grand gestures, but through small, everyday habits, seemingly harmless reactions that silently erode your self-esteem and self-worth. And when you look closely, you'll notice that there are some very familiar manifestations of over-respect that many of us are guilty of. The first manifestation is always nodding in agreement. Do you find yourself saying, yes, okay, often even when you don't want to? You don't dare to say, no, even though it is clearly against your own interests or desires. At first, you think that saying yes will keep the peace and make you more popular. But gradually, you become a person without an opinion. Others will think, she will always say yes. Why ask for a serious opinion? And so, your voice gradually disappears in every conversation. The second expression is to always put other people's feelings above your own. You are afraid of making others sad, afraid of making them angry, afraid of making them disappointed. Therefore, you constantly sacrifice your real needs. You accept fatigue, loss, as long as you keep others happy. But try to stop and ask yourself, if I keep ignoring my feelings, who will care about them? When you always put others first, you are silently sending a message that your feelings are not important. And once you believe that, how can others respect you? Next expression. Avoid conflict at all costs. Many people are so afraid of arguing that, as soon as they see a situation that is likely to escalate, they choose to stay silent. Stay silent to maintain peace. Stay silent to avoid confrontation. But do you realize that silence does not solve the problem, but only adds to the injustice? Others will think you agree, and you will suffer more disadvantages that you do not deserve. Conflict is not always a bad thing. If handled skillfully, it is a way for both sides to understand each other better and find a fair solution. But when you always avoid, you not only lose the opportunity to express yourself, but also inadvertently create conditions for others to overwhelm you. And perhaps the most dangerous manifestation, self-deprecation. You start to think that other people are better, more important, more worthy of respect. You shrink yourself, and over time, that belief becomes your reality. The scary thing is that when you believe you are inferior, you will act like one. Others see that, and they will treat you exactly as you define yourself. I once knew a friend who was always humble in every situation. If the group went out to eat, he was always the one who said, anything is fine. If he went to work, he always took on the difficult tasks because everyone else was busy. He thought that this would make others like him more. But what happened when he started to feel exhausted and wanted to share the burden? No one listened. They were used to the image of the always ready to suffer. And sadly, he also started to believe that he was not worthy of asking for anything. This is the result of too much respect to the point of self-deprecation. So, if you find yourself falling into these behaviors, take it as a warning. Respecting others is necessary, but don't let it become a trap that makes you lose your own value. Try asking yourself, am I saying yes just because I'm afraid of rejection? Am I ignoring my feelings just to make others happy? Am I keeping quiet to avoid trouble, but suffering inside? And most importantly, do I consider myself inferior to others? The answers to these questions will tell you where you stand. And if the answers make you realize that you are giving too much respect to others, then it is time to change. Because if you want others to respect you, you must learn to respect yourself first. Do you want others to truly respect you? If so, remember one immutable principle. Others will only respect you when you respect yourself first. Respect cannot go against this law. The more you try to lower yourself to please someone, the more you send a signal that says, I am not important. My feelings do not matter. And once you allow yourself to be small, others will never look at you with respect. The first thing you need to build is self-esteem. Ask yourself, what would I never do? Even if it meant losing someone's favor? Maybe it's letting someone look down on you, letting someone treat you as a temporary option, or letting a job exploit you without giving you the value you deserve. When you set boundaries for what you'll accept, you define your own worth. And this is the foundation for others to see you differently. Next is knowing how to set boundaries. One of the reasons many people are disrespected is because they don't dare to say no. They say yes to everything, from taking on extra responsibilities that don't belong to them to tolerating unreasonable behavior from others. But remember, no is not impolite. No is a way for you to maintain balance. You can say no gently but firmly. Sorry, I can't take on this anymore. Or, I see what you mean, but I disagree on this point. Having clear boundaries doesn't make you less likable, but it makes others learn to respect you more. Third thing, equal dialogue. Have you noticed that, many times, respect comes from the way you communicate, not just from the content of your words? When talking, look the other person straight in the eye. Speak slowly, firmly and clearly express your position. Don't mumble, don't be shy, because body language determines 50% of how others feel about you. If you stand up straight, your eyes are firm, your voice is clear, others will automatically see you as trustworthy and respectable, even if your opinion is not necessarily correct. And last but not least, respect others but don't idolize them. Someone may be better than you at something, but they are not perfect. They have weaknesses and make mistakes. When you look at them with an even-handed eye, one that is respectful and sober, you maintain a balanced position in the relationship. You are not inferior to them, but you do not need to act superior to them either. You are both human, and you both deserve to be heard and understood. I once witnessed a young colleague who had just joined the company. He was very smart, but at first he idolized his boss. Always said yes, always worked overtime without complaining. As a result, he was assigned more and more work without anyone noticing his efforts. It was only when he learned to set boundaries, dared to say no to unreasonable requests, and stand up for his views in meetings that respect appeared. His boss began to listen to him more. His colleagues also looked at him differently. And most importantly, he no longer felt like a shadow in the group, but became an individual with real value. You see, respect isn't something you beg for. It's a result of living your values, protecting your boundaries, and communicating as an equal. People won't dare disrespect someone who is confident, steadfast, and clear about their worth. And that balance, neither self-deprecating nor arrogant, is the foundation for true respect in any relationship. Have you ever noticed that the greatest philosophers in history all had the same perspective on respect? And interestingly, their teachings, thousands of years ago, are still relevant today. If you want to understand respect in a deeper way, not just as a social behavior, but as a philosophy of life, then Stoic philosophy is the place to start. Epictetus, a slave-turned-philosopher, once said, "No one can humble you unless you humble yourself." This statement seems simple, but it contains a great truth. Many times we think that others make us feel small, but in fact, we are the ones who allow it to happen. When you respect someone too much, when you lower yourself to please them, you are sending a signal to yourself, "I am below you. I am less valuable than you." And from that moment on, you have given others the right to look down on you. Epictetus reminds us that dignity is something we have in our own hands. Others cannot take away your respect unless you give it away. Marcus Aurelius, the famous Stoic emperor, in his book Meditations, also emphasizes a truth. Human beings are equal in nature. They only differ in their choice of action. Think about it. We are all finite beings. Rich or poor, powerful or ordinary, we all breathe the same air. We all suffer the same cycle of birth, aging, sickness and death. The only thing that makes the difference is our daily actions and choices. That is why Marcus reminds us not to look up to anyone too much, nor to look down on anyone too much. Because when you idolize someone, you forget that they are just a human being like you, with mistakes and weaknesses. And when you look down on someone, you also forget that they still have values that you have not seen. True respect comes from a fair view, not condescending, not arrogant. Seneca, another Stoic thinker, warned of a disease in relationships. Sycophancy. He believed that flattery is not respect, but only a tool to gain benefits. Flatterers praise you not because they truly respect you, but because they want to get something from you. And those who live by flattery, sooner or later lose their own self-respect. Seneca taught that only people who know how to keep their dignity and self-respect are truly respected by others, because respect cannot be bought with compliments. It comes only from character and perseverance. If we put these three teachings together, we can derive an immutable law. Respect starts with you. If you humble yourself, you will be despised. If you idolize others, you will lose your balance. If you flatter, you will lose your dignity. But if you know how to respect yourself, see others fairly, and live honestly, respect will come to you naturally. Take a look at your own life. How many times have you been silent in the face of injustice, just because you were afraid of offending someone? How many times have you praised someone, not because you really meant it, but because you wanted them to like you more? And how many times have you put someone on such a pedestal that you yourself became a shadow in that relationship? If you find yourself in these situations, the reminders of Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, and Seneca are for you. Stoic philosophy does not call for you to be cold or indifferent. It simply teaches that live with self-respect, respect others with fairness, and never trade your dignity for temporary satisfaction. That is the path to true respect. Respect that exists not only in the eyes of others, but also in your heart, as a firm belief that, I am valuable, and I deserve to be treated as an equal. Sit down and look back at some of the relationships in your life. Have you ever realized that you have given too much respect, too much humility, only to receive contempt in return? That is the downside of being too respectful of others. It doesn't stop at temporary moments of discomfort, but leaves long-term consequences, silently eroding your very being. First of all, when you have too much respect, you start to lose personal value. You forget who you are. Forget what is really important to you. Instead of living as an independent individual, you gradually become a shadow in the eyes of others. Whatever they want, you do. Whatever they think, you follow. And as each day passes, you no longer live your own life, but live the life that others want. Even more painfully, you no longer recognize yourself. The next consequence is a perverse relationship. When respect comes from only one side, friendship, love, and even work become one-sided relationships. You give, they take. You give, they benefit. The balance disappears. And when the scales are out of balance, there is nothing left to keep the relationship standing in the long run. In love, one person always endures and the other is always pampered. The result can only be coldness and contempt. In work, an employee who always nods, always says, yes, sooner or later becomes a tool instead of a teammate. And when the imbalance persists, you will face hurt and bitterness. Imagine this. You give sincere respect, but in return you only receive contempt. You always save face for others, but no one cares about your feelings. At that moment, you will fall into deep disappointment. And if this situation is repeated, it will plant in your mind a dangerous belief: I am not worth it. That feeling is the biggest enemy of self-confidence. Once you believe you are not worth enough, you will act like you are not worth enough. You will continue to be humbled, continue to sacrifice, and continue to be taken advantage of. It is a vicious cycle, and the longer you stay in it, the harder it is to escape. I once met a friend who was always considered a nice guy. He was willing to spend time, effort, and even personal gain just to please others. But after many years, he confided, "I feel like no one really values me. They only come to me when they need me, and disappear when they don't. That's the price of too much respect. You become the easy choice, but never the important choice." So, remember, respect is only meaningful when it comes from both sides. You give, but you also receive. You give, but you don't lose yourself. A healthy relationship, whether it's a friendship, a love relationship, or a business relationship, requires balance. If you find yourself always on the losing end, always carrying the burden, that's not respect, it's injustice. Don't let respect become a chain that binds you. Don't let humility make you lose yourself. Dare to stand up, dare to set boundaries, and dare to remind yourself that, "I have value, and I deserve equal respect," because if you don't believe in your own worth, don't expect anyone else to. As you come to the end of this journey, there is one message I want you to take to heart. Respecting others is necessary. But too much respect is a double-edged sword. It may make you think you are behaving well and building good relationships, but in reality, it can silently take away your self-worth. People will only truly respect you if you know how to maintain a balance, neither demeaning nor idolizing anyone. In everyday life, this is very evident. In communication, you need to learn to say no. Refusal does not mean being rude, but affirming boundaries. Every time you dare to refuse something unreasonable, you are sending a message: "I know my worth and I will not let anyone cross that limit." At work, you need to take a stand. Your colleagues or superiors may not agree with you, but if you dare to stand firm on your point of view, they will know that you have a voice. And in love, boundaries are more important than ever. A relationship is only healthy when both parties know how to respect each other. If you only know how to sacrifice, you will never receive true love in return. Ask yourself, how many times have you tired of nodding your head? How many times have you swallowed back tears just to keep the peace? And how many times have you told yourself, "It's okay," when your heart was screaming that it was absolutely not okay? Those are the moments when you have given so much respect to others that you forgot to give yourself respect too. Stoic philosophy has a powerful reminder. If you want to be respected, stop respecting others too much. When you live with confidence, with an equal outlook, and know how to protect your own values, you do not need to beg for respect. Respect will come naturally, not from superficial compliments, but from genuine admiration. I once met a woman who had been accustomed to giving in all her life. She believed that sacrifice was the only way to maintain love and peace in the family. But then, when her husband got used to it, he no longer looked at her with respect. Only when she learned to set boundaries, dared to say no, dared to demand fairness, did love return to its true meaning, a love based on mutual respect. That story shows that respect never comes from servility, but only when you know how to stand up for your own values. So if you want to be respected, start today. Don't be afraid to say no. Don't be afraid to speak up when you know it's right. Don't let emotions make you lose your boundaries. And most importantly, never forget that you deserve to be respected, to be heard, to be loved, just like anyone else. Finally, remember, respect is not something you ask for. It is something you earn by the way you live. When you dare to live confidently, dare to maintain balance, and dare to protect your values, that will be the time when others look at you with true respect, not because you respect them too much, but because you know how to respect yourself.